Hey, what's going on, folks? It is Rosie here, and today we are going to talk about some DLC ideas that I've cooked up for Starfield. It's no secret that this game's reception has been mediocre at best, so Bethesda's going to try to turn this around with post-release content and adjustments like they did with Fallout 76. Which is doable, but I think to do it, they're going to have to change their design philosophy for this game going forward. They made the game that they intended to make and did a decent job of that, but not enough fans are taking a big interest in what's here. Most Bethesda fans are starving for the extremely rich experience that previous Bethesda games like Skyrim presented them with, and Starfield is simply not satisfying that craving. So in a nutshell, I think Bethesda needs a new vision to base future content for this game on. That's the path to getting lots of gamers interested in this game again. And they did this to some extent with Fallout 76. There are a few quotes from an old Todd Howard interview that I want to bring up here because I think this is the best basis we have to speculate about Bethesda's point of view on everything going on with Starfield right now. This is the best thing we've got in asking questions like what conversations are being had in Rockville right now and what options are being considered for the future of Starfield. It's called Todd Howard Talks Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout 76, Terminator, and more, IGN Unfiltered episode 43. The section that we are interested in for our purposes is the Fallout 76 chapter. Ryan McCaffrey asked, "Were you caught off guard by the launch of that game?" Todd responded, "We knew we were going to have a lot of bumps. That's a difficult development, a lot of new systems and things like that. Hey, we're going to go try this new thing. At any time you're going to do something new like that, you know you're going to have your bumps. You know that a lot of people might say that's not the game we want from you, but we still want to be somebody who's trying new things." And that was a very difficult development on that game to get it where it was. And we were ready for, a lot of those difficulties ended up on the screen, and we knew, hey look, this is not the type of game that people are used to from us, and we're going to get some criticism on it. And a lot of that very well deserved criticism. So the higher-ups at Bethesda aren't fools. They went into 76 knowing that they'd get some backlash from more traditional BGS fans. And my guess is they went into Starfield with similar expectations. Though this time around, I think the divide between their expectations and the actual fan reception is a bit larger. But Todd is right, developers must try new things. When developers attempt to take an experience that their fans are familiar with and really rethink it, it often doesn't go well, but there are times that it does. Pokemon Legends Arceus was a reimagined experience and a well-received game. Some might argue that Starfield is not a reimagined experience because it was not an existing IP, but it is an extension of the Bethesda RPG experience, which has existed for a long time. Todd elaborated a bit more on what he was saying about 76 in this next quote. "But we felt strongly this is a game we want to play. This is something we really want to do, and all of the games like this, whether it's us or somebody else, you can go back and look at them, there's a period once you launch. It's not how you launch, it's what it becomes." This is very true. When developers launch a reimagined experience, there's often a period of chaos, then there's a period of adjustment. Fallout 76 is a prime example of this, and Todd threw ESO out there too. ESO's initial reception was awful, but now it has a huge audience. I mean, Final Fantasy XIV had to relaunch, but improved a whole lot post-relaunch. So can Bethesda overhaul Starfield like they did with 76? What can they do during this period of adjustment that could bring players back to Starfield? Well, I think it's going to take enormous changes in game-making philosophy. The vision for the Starfield experience at launch seems to have been a space-themed RPG with sandbox elements that's primarily driven by exploration. And it's become clear that this is not going to work. The main thing that's just not working here is exploration is not working as the driving force behind playing this game. If Bethesda tries to simply make more content based on this vision, then I think players will gradually dwindle away and Starfield will be irrelevant within 2 years. So how can Bethesda use DLC to reimagine this experience during this adjustment period to really turn Starfield around? Well, what is Starfield's main problem? It lacks substance. It's a massive empty world, but the DLCs don't have to be. To help explain what I'm saying here, let's talk about Fallout 3. The expansions Bethesda did for that game were very experimental. There wasn't really a blueprint for how to do DLCs back then, so they played with a few different concepts to kinda see what works here, what do fans like, and we ended up with some amazing content. They weren't afraid to really change up the actual gameplay, and that's what really made these expansions so special. And I think that is exactly what Starfield needs. Now let's talk specifically about Operation Anchorage, the Pitt, and Mothership Zeta. When a player starts one of these expansions, they are cut off from the rest of the game until they complete it. So let's call these Escape Room DLCs. I think that Bethesda should do some Escape Room DLCs for Starfield. With these kinds of DLCs, they can remove the player from that massive empty setting and confine them to smaller but reasonably sized settings that are loaded with quality-rich content. That way, there would at least be portions of the game that don't have Starfield's main problem, which is the general lack of substance. So here's my first idea for an Escape Room DLC. With Operation Anchorage, Bethesda combines their RPG experience with a first-person shooter campaign kind of experience. It was like Fallout meets Call of Duty, and it worked surprisingly well. So what if Bethesda did something like this in Starfield that took us back to the colony war between the UC and the FC? I think that would be awesome. It would be a great opportunity to further develop the lore that is here in a way that's fun. Imagine actually operating a mech or coordinating xenoweapons. And how about space battles? We could actually fight in the battles of Mira, Cassiopeia, and Cheyenne. Maybe we could even watch Londinian fall to the Terramorphs. I'm really proud of this DLC idea. Let's hype this up to make sure Bethesda sees it. Maybe if I'm lucky, they'll even let me do a cameo. My next idea is to do something with Kaiju, which in case you don't know is the umbrella term for Godzilla-like giant monsters. Here's how I'm envisioning this starting. When walking around cities, one can hear guards mentioning something going on somewhere in space, which triggers an objective to go investigate. The player follows that objective to that point in space and discovers a squadron of ships engaged in a battle with a kaiju that's somehow traversing open space. Once it's defeated, someone from the squadron talks to the player and they say something like, "Thanks for the assist, but we need to figure out how this thing managed to get off-world. If these giant monsters could travel through space, they could kill us all." This prompts the player to travel to the planet that these kaiju inhabit to help this new faction figure out what's going on. Now let's talk gameplay. First, I think Bethesda should do in-atmosphere flying for this one planet so that they can do King Kong versus planes kind of combat situations. In addition to the massive kaiju that we need ships to take on, there's also smaller ones that we can encounter on the ground. Think Kong Skull Island. That setting is very much like what I'm envisioning here. In fact, the ground exploration portion should just be an island. Just like space and planets are two separate realities in the base game, in-atmosphere flying and ground exploration are two separate realities in this DLC. Because everything just becomes so much easier that way. Give players a nice handcrafted island to explore and build a hub there for this kaiju hunting faction. And make the rest of the planet the in-atmosphere flying portion where the Godzilla-sized kaiju can be encountered. Keep this portion of the planet very simple from a visual standpoint in order to prioritize functionality, because the air fights are going to be complicated and will require new systems, so focus time and resources there. Do a big ocean and some very basic land masses. Also consider doing an underwater portion, but just for a quest or two, that way you don't have to generate the entire ocean floor. Now let's talk more about these air kaiju fights, because these are going to be hard to make. Like I said before, think about King Kong versus planes, that's how these are going to look. Essentially, these fights would be that meets like a Dark Souls boss fight. So this is the main obstacle of Bethesda making a DLC like this. These fights are going to be hard to create, and Bethesda is not experienced in making things like this. Elaborate boss fights are nothing new, but combining that with an extensive flying mechanic is something very new. So in summary for this one, I think it's a good idea, but it's not as practical as some of the other ones I've got. The third idea I've got is a horror-themed or maybe even haunted star station. The player is prompted to dock at a star station somewhere and for whatever reason can't leave, maybe the docker malfunctions or something. Then the people that live in there explain that something very strange has been going on and they are very scared. Apparently people have been dying and they're not sure if they have a serial killer or if the place is haunted somehow. Then of course the player has to figure out what's going on in order to escape. The gameplay would feel like Mothership Zeta meets Among Us, which I think would work beautifully. Best of all, this DLC would be pretty easy to make. The challenge is giving it replay value. That's the thing with the mystery genre. Whether it's Poirot, Sherlock Holmes, or Scooby-Doo, once the audience knows who did it, the second time hearing the story is never going to be as good. So how can Bethesda work around that to make this DLC worth playing multiple times? Multiple endings, as in multiple possible culprits like in a game of Clue. But I think they should even go a step further. What if the whole questline itself could shift and bend in different ways, resulting in it never playing out the same way twice? Let's say this is the start, where the player arrives at the star station. And once the initial conversation concludes, there's not one but two possible next objectives, and those two each have two more possible next steps, and so on. That would give this DLC replay value. However, this presents another problem. Each possible scenario still needs to be solvable, as in the player still needs to be able to put the clues together and solve the mystery for every possible outcome. Because that's what's fun about the mystery genre, solving the mystery, so if the player can't do that, then it's just not going to be fun. So maybe the goal of it never playing out the exact same way twice is too ambitious. But what if there were, say, 5 basic possible quest lines, and for each one there's also a parallel version that plays out the same way until the very end, where it turns out the person that is the culprit in the basic version is being framed? That, I think, would be enough to keep us on our toes until the very end each time playing. I love this idea, and because of its simplicity, I could easily see modders making something like this as well. For a 4th spot, how about a Forgotten City-inspired DLC for Starfield? For those who aren't familiar, the Forgotten City began as a Skyrim mod created by a modder called Modern Storyteller, though now he's better known by his name, Nick Pierce. And this mod still to this day is in my opinion the best narrative-driven mod there's ever been, and many other critics agree. It received lots of accolades, and I'll personally say Nick's writing and design work are absolutely exquisite. His use of the open-world RPG medium to tell the story and make it fun and interesting for players is absolutely phenomenal. The Forgotten City was actually so successful that Nick was able to start his own studio, which is called Modern Storyteller, and they reimagined the Forgotten City into its own game, which you can play on Xbox, PC, PlayStation, and Switch. So how could Bethesda make a DLC inspired by the Forgotten City? Well, one of the main premises of the setting Nick designed is that it's underground, and to get there one has to fall down this long shaft, making it so once you're down there you can't get back up. So what if Bethesda did this with a planet? Let's say the DLC starts with the player's ship getting sucked into some sort of gravitational anomaly surrounding a planet, and this anomaly also makes it so that once you're on the other side, you can't leave because the pull is just too strong. Sort of like the energy field that Obi-Wan and Anakin encounter in Season 1, Episode 18 of the Clone Wars, Mystery of a Thousand Moons. And early on, after arriving on this planet, the player finds a civilization made up of people that have all gotten stuck there. Furthermore, I think it would be neat to use the pure concepts that they are stuck there to craft the society and culture of these people. Like, they're constantly asking, why are we here? Did someone or something bring us here for a purpose? Should we be trying to find a way to leave? Etc. And from these questions, they formed a few different schools of thought. 1. Regardless of what brought them there, they should be trying to leave. 2. Trying to leave is futile, and even if it weren't, why do it? They have a beautiful planet that's free from the nonsense of the settled systems. So regardless of what brought them there, they should stay and make themselves a nice home there. And lastly, they were brought there by some sort of really smart or maybe even divine being for a purpose, and the first step in determining that purpose is to explore the planet until they find this being. So these groups are sort of factions, but I use that term loosely, and that's because I don't want the lines between who's who to be so strictly drawn. I want there to be some mystique about who's on what side of the whole thing, because that way you always have to wonder, is this person telling me everything, or are they lying for the sake of their family maybe, are they just a bit shy with me, etc. So maybe there's like the strict followers that stick to their part of the city, but there are also people that haven't committed all the way to one group that live sort of in the middle. And of course the main questline would be finding out how and why they're trapped there and finding a way to leave. This idea is really a whole lot like the TV show Lost now that I think about it. The strength of this DLC is that this whole concept is much more in line with classic Bethesda, and I think it suits the space theme of Starfield well. Some questions I recall some of the devs posing as like the big questions that drive Starfield are, what is out there? What is our role in that? Is there something prompting us to go explore space, etc.? And I think the questions I just posed for this DLC are a nice extension of those questions, because rather than having the freedom of space to explore and discover, we now have the confinement of one planet, which makes us consider everything differently. We have to rethink our approach to answering those questions. So that's it for the escape room DLC ideas, but I have one more for you. There is another way to address Starfield's main problem. The actual bare bones of Starfield's game design are the same thing Bethesda has been doing since before Todd Howard. You've got a bunch of objectives that the player finds out in an open world, some of which are long flagging sequences and others are pretty simple. But what matters, what people actually play traditional Bethesda games for, is what's on the bones, the content. The characters, the conversations, the lore, environmental storytelling, that's what carries traditional Bethesda games. But Starfield's content is just not enough to carry it, and given the nature of this game, Bethesda probably won't be able to produce enough content to carry it, especially now that we're post-release. However, content is not the only thing that can carry a game. Given some things I know I've said in the past, I can't believe I'm going to say what I'm about to say. But what this space-themed RPG with good gunplay and decent flying mechanics really is missing is a multiplayer experience. That's right, I believe Bethesda's best chance at making Starfield a game that will be relevant for at least a decade is creating an online multiplayer matchmaking experience, which is going to take a lot of work, but they need to add something to carry this game, and I think this is more practical than trying to do it with content to this point, because it would take a lot of people and a lot of time to produce enough content to carry it, and sooner or later they need to put every writer and designer they've got on Elder Scrolls 6, emphasis on sooner. So what kinds of game types could work well for Starfield? Well, here are the games I recommend looking to as the kind of experience we're looking to create: Halo Reach, Black Ops 2, and Destiny. There is a glaring issue we need to address here though. Bethesda is not experienced in making games like what we're talking about here. So what's probably a better and more realistic plan here is outsourcing another Microsoft studio to do this multiplayer DLC. The one that comes to mind is 343 Industries, but Halo Infinite is doing alright, so I don't think they're going to be looking for another project right now. The next best suitor would be one of the COD studios, maybe Treyarch, Infinity Ward, or Sledgehammer could take on a project like this. And I want to point out here that each of these games did last a very long time because of their multiplayers. The Halo Reach multiplayer experience actually has aged so well that it's been ported to Halo MCC and people still play it. The Black Ops 2 multiplayer is still going as well. I play that quite regularly. An average night I'd say there's 1,000 to 2,000 players on there. While the actual figures don't seem impressive, they actually are considering both these games came out over 10 years ago. The most basic starting point for a game type would be traditional COD-style PvP team deathmatch, but I think an experience like that in Starfield would more closely resemble the Clash game type in Destiny, which I myself had fun playing. I gave Destiny a lot of crap, but Clash kept me playing for a month or two before I was like, I'll just play Skyrim again. Also, the Starborn powers could be used as killstreak awards in this kind of game type, which I think would be very fitting. And from this team deathmatch or clash kind of thing, the devs could also branch into concepts like capture the flag, territories, search and destroy, infection, stockpile, gun game, etc. So that's how the devs could do basic PvP, but another thing they could try is some sort of survival game. The basis for this would be Firefight from Halo and zombies from COD. And there is an obvious thing from Starfield to use as the attacker: terramorphs. They can hijack the minds of other creatures, so they can be used as a sort of hive mind antagonist of a survival game mode. And the nature of this mind control ability makes it so they can send all kinds of creatures at the players. My last idea for a multiplayer game mode is naval battles in space. Imagine spawning in on a team of 6 and you're each flying a Class A fighter. Additionally, you have a flagship with an NPC garrison on board and maybe some support ships as well. And you face off against another team of 6, and whoever manages to take the other team's flagship first wins. I think that would be so much fun. It would be really hard to balance though. In fact, the devs may have to resort to just putting one team on offense and the other on defense like Invasion and Halo. Because the main flaw I foresee for a game mode like this is everyone's going to want to be on offense. What I think is going to happen without assigned offense and defense is everyone's just going to try to dock with the other team's ship to take it and win, and no one's actually going to defend their own flagship. So figuring the specifics out here could take some work, but if Starfield had a game mode like this, I would play it all day. Another bonus to adding a multiplayer experience to Starfield is that Bethesda can use it to complement the exploration elements of the game. Maybe by going out and surveying planets, we can unlock unique customization options for multiplayer. That would provide us with an objective reason to go out and explore. In summary, adding a multiplayer experience to Starfield would be very unorthodox for a number of reasons, but it might just be Bethesda's best chance to turn this game around. Well, that's a wrap, folks. Those are my 5 ideas for DLCs that could save Starfield. Like I said at the beginning, I think Bethesda needs to rethink the Starfield experience. They're not fools. They see the figures. They know changes need to be made. And they have been in this situation before with Fallout 76. So the right conversations are being had down in Rockville. Now maybe they'll consider some of these ideas, who knows? With escape room DLCs, they can create pockets of content that don't lack substance like most of Starfield. And they can keep lots of players occupied for a long time with a multiplayer experience. I'm excited to see what becomes of Starfield. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment with any ideas you have for DLC. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.